It's very exciting to be able to chat about the Routledge Studies in Rural Criminology series, and particularly the book on rural crime prevention, Theory, Tactics and Techniques, which I edited. It's now available in hard copy, soft copy, paperback, and also e-copy. As the series editor, what did you think of the book?
Well, this book is one of the most significant books to be published in the 21st century because it is the first in the series from Routledge, and it covers a variety of topics that attempt to link theory with actual practice for officers and for citizens who want to increase safety and security in rural communities. And that is a bit of a rare thing.
The book's separated in three parts. It starts with the theory and context of rural crime prevention, moves on to thinking specifically around some of the people involved in rural spaces and who might be victims of crime, and importantly, with a focus here on what can you do about it? What are the crime prevention measures that might be able to be implemented in order to prevent offending from happening? And the third key part of the book is all around rural property, the environment and nature. So expanding our thinking around victimization and therefore what crime prevention measures you can put in place against for people, aspects of the rural space, which are not just people, but it could be the environment as well. A really key facet of the book is the introduction of practitioner perspectives. So people who are getting their boots dirty, they're getting dirt under the fingernails, they're out there in local communities, and they're actually doing practical things to try to make rural communities safer, more livable, and preventing the incidence of crime.
And let's give an example. Chapter 17 by Angus Nurse on preventing wildlife crime. He is a well-known scholar in the area of poaching, and he wrote that chapter. But following, or part of that same chapter 17, is an article by Jeff Edmond on preventing crimes against rural fauna. So you get both the academic point of view and the practitioner point of view right next to each other, which I think is a great feature of any kind of criminology book.
The risk of singling out any chapters in particular, there's 18 chapters in this book. One that I would highlight particularly is one by Willie Clack from the University of South Africa, where he reimagines that traditional 25 situational crime prevention techniques that every scholar and many practitioners would be well aware of, those 25 situational crime prevention techniques, which were originally, as with much of criminology, have a very urban focus, a very urban bias. He's reimagined that to think around how can we prevent livestock theft, particularly. A fantastic contribution to not just the book, but to our understandings of livestock theft, not just in South Africa, but internationally as well.
That kind of advance of scholarship is, I think, more important for rural criminology than for a lot of the other subdisciplines in criminology. The rural population of the world is about 3.5 billion. Even though its percent of the world population is going down, its aggregate population is in fact going up, and they live in millions of different places, huge diversity. And the ability to link theory, concepts to real life, put a face on what's happening to rural people around the world is, I think, a key to making rural criminology a very vital and very informative discipline back to the rest of criminology. And we probably in rural criminology do that more than any other subdiscipline that's out there. And I mean by subdiscipline, there are something like 15 divisions in the American Society of Criminology. And we probably have an emphasis on application more so than the others. And it is a point of pride, from my point of view, that theory is informed by practice, but then practice is informed by theory.
Another key theme that emerged throughout the book, which is of high interest, is the role of technology. The role of technology when it comes to rural victims. And we're thinking around interpersonal violence here, a chapter by Bridget Harris, thinking around technology facilitated abuse and coercive control. Many of you might think, well, what's the relevance between urban settings and rural settings? And of course, in many rural settings, access to broadband, reliable internet services are much more diminished than they would be in built-up areas. Vania Sakato and Temedeo James Arasolia also contributed to this, thinking about the role of modern technology. So all of the different practical crime prevention measures, CCTV cameras, a whole array of different forms of crime prevention, which can be applied in a whole array of different rural settings as well. And the final chapter from myself and Cole Mulrooney really sort of exploring about, well, what is the future of technology and its usage in different rural settings?
Those also provide opportunities. All of those settings where technology is being introduced provide opportunities for evaluations of what really works within rural context. And in other words, it may be borrowing technology that was perhaps made for an urban environment. And so the question is, how does it work in a rural setting? And so I think the future of a lot of rural research in rural criminology is going to be along the lines of documenting the best practices that are available for law enforcement and citizens groups in smaller places.
A good example of this is on fraud. Now, any scroll through Google Scholar or library databases will find a lot of information about fraud and fraud prevention. Add in the search term rural and you'll find but one entry, and that is probably the chapter in this book from Cassandra Cross from Queensland University of Technology, where she thinks around, for the first time, around how do you prevent fraud victimization in rural areas? What are some of the particular aspects of romance fraud schemes, other fraudulent behaviours, and the impacts on vulnerable people who happen to live geographically in rural, regional or remote parts of the world?
There is no rural area today, except perhaps the middle of Antarctica and the middle of Siberia, that isn't affected by crimes that are cyber assisted or specifically cyber based.